Thanks for tuning in to more New England Patriots coverage on the Ourlads Football Network. Pat's Probe with Evan Lazar of CLNSmedia.com. And Evan, of course, also can be found on YouTube. How often is that? Once or twice a week on YouTube, Evan?
The podcasts are twice a week, but we do a bunch of other videos as well. And right now I have a film room up on Mac Jones, so we do a bunch of different things on there.
And that,
Patriots Press Pass is the name of the channel.
yeah, matter of fact, I should get that logo put up here while I'm talking to you. Okay, so even though the Patriots lost, and coming from a fellow fan or a host of a show covering their team that has a first-round rookie quarterback, this year is really the most important thing about knowing that the team has found their future quarterback.
Sure.
With the Jets, with the Patriots, this is a Patriot show. Mac Jones definitely seemed like he delivered.
Looks like the answer right now. Obviously, there's a long way to go. Things can change, situations can change, but I think what you saw at a Mac was a quarterback that was fully in command and didn't look like the stage was too big for him. And this was going up against a defense in the Miami Dolphins that is supposed to be one of the better defenses in the NFL this year and is a pretty good secondary and a pretty good unit in terms of schematics in the front seven and blitzing and disguising and all that kind of stuff. And Brian Flores blitzed Mac Jones 21 times. He stood in there, took all of the hits, still delivered the football down the field. He was hit 9 times in this game, kept on getting back up, kept on making those throws and staring down the barrel, as I like to call it, and knowing that that bullet's coming towards him, he just continued to sling it. And you keep on doing those types of things as a quarterback, and you're going to be impressed. And I think that that's the main takeaway from this game, is that as much as the loss is frustrating, the way that they lost was reflective of what we saw last year, right? Where they're very, very close at the end of the game, but just unable to close it out, or an uncharacteristic turnover or penalty or something puts them behind. And that is what ends up being their fatal flaw in the game. That felt a lot like last year with Cam Newton, but in terms of future outlook and the long-term outlook for this team, you come away really optimistic if you're a Patriots fan.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you watch the game and you did get a feeling that the Patriots outplayed the Dolphins for most of the game. It wasn't a one-sided affair, but it was a little bit surprising the Patriots lost. But you see why that happened. They had the 2 key turnovers. They weren't able to finish a few drives, the field goals instead of the touchdowns. And then afterwards, you see, they almost had 400 yards to about Miami's was close to about 250. They were at 259. So it's almost 400 to 250. That's pretty significant in the NFL. And a little bit surprising then that you lose. But again, that's what happens, like I said, when you turn the football over and you settle for field goals instead of touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game the Patriots should have won on paper, right? They outgained Miami significantly. They dominated time of possession. They were better on third down than the Dolphins were, but the Dolphins capitalized on a few of their red zone opportunities that the Patriots did not. And you get down to the end of the game, and I think the frustrating part for Patriots fans from this game looking back is offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels seemed to tighten up a little bit in certain situations with his rookie quarterback and say, Mac drove him down the field twice in the fourth quarter. He drove him down the field, got them into the Miami Dolphins red zone, into their territory, and McDaniels ran the football. Right. And towards the end of the game, you can understand it because they're trying to milk the clock a little bit as well and make sure that Tua doesn't have a ton of time on the back end to answer the touchdown that the Patriots put in the end zone. But you go all the way down the field on the second to last drive of the game. Mac Jones is 8 of his last 10 passes completed. He drives them right down the field, and then they go run to Damian Harris on first down, a toss to Damian Harris on second down, and then the third down becomes an incomplete pass, and then they kick the field goal, right? And you look at that and you say, oh man, I mean, 2nd and 7 from Miami's 18-yard line with about 11 minutes to go, and he runs a toss to Damian Harris. That feels like a play that a shot at the end zone when you're down 17-13 in the fourth quarter, you have to take a shot there at some point, right? You have to try to put the ball in the end zone at some point. So and then on third down on the same drive, they rolled Mac out in the pocket and gave him a one read throw to Jacoby Myers in the flat, and he missed it. So two very conservative play calls back to back once you get down into the red zone. And I would have understood it if Mac Jones was flirting with an interception all game. His ball security wasn't great. He looked skittish in the pocket. Those types of rookie signs, right? But Mac Jones looked like a veteran quarterback for most of this game. He was a little bit nervous, I would say, for the first couple of drives, maybe a little bit more timid, but then he started to turn it on in the second quarter and really found his groove in the third and fourth quarters. And Mac Jones was up for it, and it didn't feel like Josh McDaniels was ready to give him that full freedom of the offense and let him really try to go out there and win the Patriots the game. So they get conservative. They run the football in those situations. They kick one field goal. Hindsight's always 20/20 with Damian Harris fumbling the ball, but you would have liked to have seen the Patriots at least throw the ball into the end zone one time on those final two drives before turning it over to Damian Harris.
It was almost like they felt, we're going to try to win this game with 2 field goals instead of taking any chances with a turnover and putting the ball in Mac Jones' hands. And they actually turned the ball over, but it wasn't Mac Jones. So, by the way, the toss play, I was watching enough football this week, and I got to tell you, can the offensive coordinators please throw that play out the window? I mean, I watched so many tosses this weekend, and like 10% work, 15% work.
McDaniels was asked about it today. He spoke today, and he was asked about it, and he said the idea is you talk about run-pass balance a lot of the time and being 50-50 in that respect. He talked about balance in terms of outside runs.
Yeah, stretching the field, right? Stretching the running range.
You don't want to just be all inside runs because then teams start to load up inside and are ready for them. But the Patriots ran 8 toss plays in this game and gained 14 yards.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
So a lot of the tosses that they were running to, they put Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry on the same side of the formation and tried to gain a gap with their 2 tight end packages towards the outside. So these weren't crack tosses where the receiver comes down, blocks the end over, and the tackle pulls out and they get that puller. These were straight tosses, right? Just what you run and see. You go down to your local high school on a Friday night and you'll see them run the same toss play that the Patriots are running in the game against the Dolphins. 8 of them gained 14 yards, and a couple of those in some key spots that late in the game where they dialed that up again, and they're either Damian Harris gained 3 yards on the 2nd and 7 carry, and then it was 3rd and 4. Just killed the momentum of the drive in certain situations. And I asked McDaniels today, I said, how much control does Mac Jones have at the line of scrimmage to check you guys out of bad plays and into a good one, right? Because you go up against this Miami front, they're playing post high, they have 8 guys in the box, and he's turning it around and handing the ball off to Damian Harris. Sure. And you just wonder, Tom Brady is Tom Brady. But we watched him for 20 years, see the single high safety, alert, let's do this, let's spread it out, let's throw the football in the air, touchdown, right? You know, we saw that for 20 years. So you just wonder how much control Mac Jones has to look at the defense and say, oh, they're single high here. We're down 4 points in the fourth quarter. I'm going for it, right? And I don't think that is there yet. I think the training wheels are still on, and it's week 1. He's a rookie quarterback. Sure. I totally understand it, but you just, as somebody that follows the team and as a fan of the team, you just want Josh McDaniels to recognize in the moment that Mac Jones is rolling. Right? Yeah. He's rolling, and he looks great, and he doesn't look like it's too big for him. He doesn't look like he's going to make that fatal mistake and throw a bad turnover or take a bad sack or anything like that. So just in the moment, adjust and recognize hey, we can do this, right? We can let them throw it
It's
here.
almost like the argument that we have nowadays in a lot of sports, especially we're seeing it in football. We see a lot more in baseball, and that's the analytics of the game and how we yearn for the manager, the coaches to okay, analytics is okay to a point, but during the game you have to have a feel of what's going on, and I think sometimes it's too much by the book. And like I said,
Yeah.
it's too much of, well, let's try to get the 2 field goals instead of, putting it in the hands of the rookie. And we're going to try to, we're the coaches. We're the ones that have been here a long time. We're going to protect.
Manage him. Right.
Yes. And it's
Yeah.
not the way that you should really handle it if you believe in your quarterback. And there was no reason not to believe in
Right.
Mac Jones. He came to the Patriots. The reason why we both believe, and everybody kind of believes he's the perfect fit for New England, is up here because he
Yeah.
has up here that not a lot of young quarterbacks have.
Yeah, and that final drive before Damian Harris fumbled, they had possessed the ball for almost 5 minutes at that point, and you could tell that they were trying to run clock. Right, they were trying to run clock, and not they might have ran out of field to fully run the clock out, but they wanted to run it down to as triple zeros as close as they possibly could. And on the one hand, you understand it, and you sort of respect that philosophy of trying to run the clock out there, especially after Thursday night when we watched Dallas give the ball back to Tom Brady with 1 minute
Yeah, I
left.
know.
And you said, oh man, that's just too much time for a quarterback. But this is Tua Tagovailoa. This is not Tom Brady, right? And the defense, for the most part, outside of the 2 drives, which I'm sure we'll talk
Yeah.
about the defense here in a second, outside of those 2 drives, the Patriots defense did its job
Yep.
on Sunday, right? They played very well. And you're going to give up some drives. You're going to give up some plays. They gave up 17 points at home. You should win that game
That's right.
9 out of 10 times. So the defense did its job. It felt like towards the end of the game that the offense just got a little too tight. McDaniels got a little tight with the rookie quarterback. Didn't trust Mac to put the ball in his hands, wanted to put it in his running game's hands. And like I said earlier, hindsight's always 2020. If Damon Harris doesn't fumble there and they run the clock down to 50 seconds
Yeah.
and they punch it in, and all these things that we're talking about are null and void.
Yeah.
But you just would like to see one shot at the end. And in general, the furthest pass that Mac Jones threw the entire game was 28 yards in the air. So, granted, this Miami secondary is great, right? Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, veteran players back there, all pro caliber talent on the outside. You're not going to test Xavier Howard with Kendrick Bourne running routes against him too often,
Yeah.
right? You're not going to throw that ball too often. But the Patriots never tried for the big play. They never tried down the field to push the ball a little bit. And I think that's ultimately what it's Mac efficiently brought them down the field multiple times, and there's so many good things to take away from Mac Jones's
Yep.
tape, from the pre-snap stuff, from the accuracy, all these types of things. But you look at that one play that got away was probably the fact that they never took a shot at the end zone, and they had some opportunities to do so.
Well, they'll definitely be able to do that this week because the Jets secondary is their weakness. And if Mac Jones has time to throw the football and if they're able to establish a running game, there shouldn't be any of those excuses against the Jets. But before we talk a little bit about next week's game, uh, some of the other things that I noticed. Well, look, Stevenson gets the carry, fumbles the football, and is how much more did he play after that?
Not much, and if at all, now that I'm thinking about it. And he also got ran over by Landon Roberts in blitz pickup as well. And you talk to the Patriots coaching staff about the 2 most important things for a running
Yeah.
back are ball security and blitz pickup.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you can't pick up a blitz, they will not put you in the game in a passing situation. They just won't. So he goes out there week 1, and I'm not ready to press the panic button in the Patriots backfield behind Damian Harris and obviously James White in passing situations. But the Sony Michel trade looks like maybe it's going to come back to bite them a little bit, because they trade Sony a capable, steady veteran running back because they really trusted Ramondre Stevenson. And he comes out in the first game and he fumbles, he gets run over in blitz pickup and doesn't see the field after that. And then you also look at the inactives, and JJ Taylor was a healthy scratch for this game. So they didn't feel confident to suit up Taylor. Ramondre Stevenson didn't pass this test. They do have Brandon Bolden, who's more of a special teams player at this stage of his career, but he might have to be a factor in terms of spelling Damian Harris, because Damian Harris can't play all the snaps. And towards the end of this game, you did see a fatigued Damian Harris, and you felt like maybe the fumble was a result of carrying that load, right? Of having to be the guy and carry the ball 20 plus times in the game. So that Michel trade, you just hope doesn't come back and haunt them, because they could have used Sony Michel yesterday.
Yeah, and look, if they're not confident with Taylor, and I can understand if they're at a point where they may feel like, well, we'd like to maybe sit Stevenson for another week or two until we feel that he's ready.
Right.
There's enough talented running backs in the NFL all over the place that you would think, if they're really not confident with their number 2 running back, true running back, I'm not talking about James White, their number 2, they're back up to Damian Harris, then go get one. They're a dime a dozen. Come on, they're all over the place. They're littered all over the place. So, but, you hope that it's just one of those games. It's a rookie situation. Look, I felt the same way with Elijah Moore. Everybody's been talking in Jet Camp about Elijah Moore. Zach throws this pass, this like Patrick Mahomes-esque pass, under pressure, 50 yards down the field, and it goes right through Elijah Moore's hands. So, and as a fan, it's like, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear how great the guy practices. I don't want to hear about how confident we are about this guy. Produce on the field when the time is right. And that's what Stevenson has to do. And now whether or not the Patriots believe that he's ready, we'll find out on Sunday.
He might be in Bill Belichick's doghouse.
He might be.
Because he also fumbled in the preseason as well. He had a fumble, and fumbles were an issue for him at Oklahoma. So he's a great runner. He's a really gifted running back in terms of what he can do with the ball in his hands. Elusive, powerful, good contact balance, ability to break tackles, vision, just everything that you would want in a running back. But at the same time, ball security is job security in New England. And if you can't hang on to the football, you are not going to play for Bill Belichick. Belichick did give Stephen Ridley in his rookie season. Ridley had quite a few fumbles as well, and Belichick let it ride because they didn't really have any other options. They have Damian Harris this time, so I think they do have other options. But in terms of spelling Damian Harris, Sony Michel was supposed to be that guy, to be the 1B to the 1A, and now it feels like they don't have that security anymore. So you look back on it and you say, was that 4th round pick for Sony Michel, is that going to be worth it, right? Is that trade really going to be worth it in the end?
Yeah, it's almost like you figure, well, did you really have to make the trade before you saw him in a regular season game?
Right.
But, Rams were desperate. They wanted someone. It was a good value, so we'll see how that works out. Okay, on the defensive side, one of the things I noticed in your review articles was about how the secondary was giving up a lot of underneath passes to the Dolphins receivers. And you can understand why that was probably the case. And you pointed that out. And we talked about it last week, with Williams and Mills. It was going to be a kind of eventful season. And the Patriots, I guess, have decided, well, this is the way we're going to play with these guys. So we'll see how it goes. It's only 1 week. It's only one matchup. It's not like Tua threw for 350 yards. How did you think it went? And what did you see that leads you to believe that it's not just a matchup thing, but it's something that we're just going to wind up seeing more of until the number 1 guy gets back in midseason?
Because how do you trust Jalen Mills and Jawan Williams to get in Jalen Waddle or Devontae Parker's face and play tight man coverage, right? I mean, you don't. So what do? You have those guys back off. You play them basically like outside safeties and just tell them don't miss the tackle and get beat for a 50-yard touchdown on a slant, right? And that's kind of what the game plan felt like. And on the one hand, it nearly worked, right? The defense gives up 17 points.
Yeah.
They dominated time of possession. They dominated total yards. They clamped down on third down. Miami only went 4 for 11 on third down. So they were able to get off the field. They were able to limit scoring opportunities. So if that's the strategy, and then when you get into that traditional drop back game, that's when the Patriots were able to open up their pass rush and get some of those exotic front looks and stuff like that and get after Tua. So the struggle was, and I posted the stats of Tua on throws in 2.5 seconds or less, right? Just those quick game throws, whether they were RPO actions or just check with knees, where if he sees the corner playing off, he's just going to throw it out there to Waddle or Parker. He averaged over 10 yards per attempt on those under 2.5 second throws. When they forced him to hold the football for more than 2.5 seconds, that dropped to 3.7 yards per attempt. So they were really good in the traditional drop back passing game, right? When Tua drop back, scanned the field, and tried to find a target, the Patriots defense was great. The problem was those schemed plays, whether they were RPO option type plays or check with me type of plays, really killed the Patriots. And they talked about it after the game. They were trying to mix up press and off coverage and kind of give Tua some different looks. And what he ended up doing was every single time the corner bailed or played off of Parker or Waddle, he just tossed it out there.
Sure.
And he let those two guys make plays with it with the ball in their hands. So to Tua's credit, I think the best part of, I've seen Tua play now 2 games against the Patriots, last year in week 15 and this year obviously in the opener. And the best part of his game is the quick decision making. He's very, very decisive with the football. Yeah. He's not a great downfield thrower. No. He doesn't have great arm talent. He doesn't have a very strong arm or that ability to kind of go through a progression and hit number 3 on the backside with a deep post or something. That's not his game. But if you get him into that quick game RPO look where you just get that football out of his hands, he's very good at reading the numbers, right? So if they have numbers to the outside, if it's 3-on-2 or a 2-on-2, the ball's going out there immediately. And then it becomes on the Patriots or the defense to close and tackle and limit those yards after the catch. But the problem for the Pats was they gave up 106 yards after the catch in this game.
No.
Tua only threw for 202. Yeah. So that's over half of their yards coming after the catch. He then threw a bomb to Devontae Parker, who wanted to jump all over J.C. Jackson and Jalen Waddle. Also caught a deep one that was about 30 yards. So there, if you add those 2 plays up, that's 65 yards right there between the 2 bombs to Waddle and Parker in the air. The rest of his yards were after the catch, right? Not a whole lot of air yard creation from Tua Tagovailoa in this game. So it was bend, don't break. And until Stephon Gilmore comes back and until they can get Gilmore on Parker or Waddle and Jackson on the other guy and really start playing some of their heavy man-to-man principles, they're going to have to rely on Jalen Mills and Juwan Williams just not giving up the backbreaker, right? Just don't give up the big play.
Isn't this interesting, because we also talked about wondering if this was going to end up being Gilmore's last season. And if this is going to end up being such a big issue, and let's say, when Gilmore comes back, everything changes for the good, well, how do you just let him walk out the door? Or how do you trade him?
Especially with a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, right? Because they're going to have money. The Patriots obviously spent a ton of money this offseason, but because Mac Jones is cost effective on that rookie deal, they're going to have money for the next 3 or 4 years to just throw at everything else, right? They're not going to have to pay the quarterback, so they're going to be able to pay everybody else a handsome penny to stay here and help Mac Jones out. So whether it's Stephon Gilmore, somebody else falls through the cracks and reaches free agency as a top cornerback, maybe they go 1st round pick cornerback in the draft in 2022. However they use the resources to get that position taken care of, it's very, very clear that when the Patriots, and this goes back before Gilmore, right? This goes back to the early 2010s, 2011, in between Ty Law, Aqib Talib, Darrelle Revis, Stephon Gilmore. The Patriots had a couple of seasons there where they had one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL because they didn't have a number 1 corner. They had a bunch of 2s and 3s, but they didn't have a number 1, and they played this style. Bend, don't break. You're going to let teams get onto the other side of the 50 sometimes. You might give up some red zone drives, but just don't let them finish the drive with 7 points. And they did that pretty well on Sunday. You have to hand them that.
And it does seem like it's a bad matchup for the Patriots against the Dolphins because of what you were saying. Because you would imagine, my guess is when you play the Dolphins, you want to press these guys. You want to force Tua to throw the ball deep because that's not what he likes to do because he's not very good at it. So maybe that's just one of those things where that's why I said, and look, this is why everybody overreacts for the first game and usually the first few games of the NFL season because matchups come into play a lot. And you don't know whether or not, hey, this guy, like last night, Waller had it seemed like Waller had 25 targets in the game.
He had, I think he had 20. I think he was at one point there was definitely at 19 in the fourth quarter.
So I'm assuming that is a matchup. So I don't anticipate that he's going to get 20 targets every game. That's the point, is that you just don't know from week to week, how that's going to look. But you do believe, based on what the Patriots and what we've talked about here defensively, is that's just the way they're going to have to play no matter who they play.
Yeah, and this also felt a little bit like last year on the defense side of the ball, too, to the degree that they are a very, very good second and long and third down defense. When they get you into those favorable down and distances for the defense, that's when Bill Belichick can spin the dial on the quarterback, get after him with different pressure looks and stuff like that, and really start to confuse these QBs and pressure the quarterback with different blitz schemes or stunting or whatever the case may be up front. These what you would call exotic looks on the defensive side of the ball, coverage rotations, zero blitzes, that kind of stuff. He can really get into that and call those types of plays. And Belichick's exotic package is still as good as anybody else's in the NFL, right? When it comes to those blitzes and rotations and different things that they can throw at the quarterbacks, it's still as good as anybody's, even all these years into the league. But on first and second down, they have to limit what they're giving up, because when they give up, like they did yesterday, a very, very high success rate on first and second down, well, you're in 3rd and 4 the entire game. And when you get into 3rd and 4, it's difficult to turn up the pressure and run those exotics because it's just an unfavorable down and different distance. There we go, for the defense. So that has been a problem for the Patriots defense, I would say, going on a year plus now, is defending first and second down. They're a great third down defense, and they always will be because of Belichick, but they need to get the defense into those third down situations. Otherwise, they are kind of screwed. So on first down, we talked to a lot of the coaches about it today. How do you stop the RPOs? How do you stop the quick throws? And obviously, they're not going to tell us the game plan or the adjustment or something like that in a press conference, but they seem to feel like they had some options of ways to do it. But what I am concerned about overall with this Patriots defense is speed in the middle of the field, because what happened on a lot of these RPOs is Tua's holding the linebackers inside with the run action, right? Because they have to respect the run action. These linebackers have to come up and play the run. And then he throws it out to Jalen Waddle, or threw it out to the Myles Gaskin one time as well on the opening drive, and gained big yardage. And then you see on the tape Juwan Bentley and Dante Hightower trying to run over there to help out the cornerbacks and close that middle of the field. So you have Jalen Mills, on the inside slant, or J.C. Jackson on the slant coming inside. They're chasing Jalen Waddle. They're expecting the linebackers to come from this direction and close it. And Dante Hightower and Juwan Bentley are just not players that you want in that situation, in these foot races. Yep. So that's a big concern still for this team, is do they have the speed at linebacker to limit those plays after the catch?
Okay, now a couple other quick things before we talk about this game this week. Falk, no surprise that he ended up playing 3 for 3 with a long of 42. And, it was very possible that he was going to be asked to go 4 for 4. That was the strategy.
That was the plan,
so,
right.
Big difference of rookie Falk. That's why Falk's out there. And then Trent Brown's injury doesn't appear to be a serious one.
Doesn't appear to be serious. Sounds like a day-to-day mild calf strain, according to Adam Schefter. And that is a big one, because first drive of the game, the Patriots' very first play from scrimmage was a 35-yard run right behind Shaq Mason and Trent Brown on the right side. And they ran the football extremely effectively on that opening drive. They gained almost 50 yards on the ground. And then Trent Brown left the game, and so did the running game, right? I mean, he just took it with him. So his presence on that line is absolutely massive for their running game, because with him and Shaq Mason on the same side there, and then you pull on Wenu from the backside, I mean, that is some beef coming right at you, right? That's a 360-pound guy in Trent Brown, a 340-pound guy in Mike Onwenu, and Shaq Mason, who's one of the best run blockers in the league going on half a decade now. So you bring those three guys downhill at these defenses, and that is extremely difficult to stop. So they desperately need Trent Brown. Justin Herron struggled when they put him in the game. Yasser Durant, who they traded for recently, he actually came in and was okay in pass protection, but the push was not the same, right? The way that they could really push off the line of scrimmage. And the Patriots are not an outside zone rushing team. They are not Kyle Shanahan's Niners. They're not the Rams. They're not trying to run side to side and get kind of horizontal on you in the running game. They are a vertical smash mouth downhill rushing attack. And if you don't have your 360-pound right tackle, that doesn't really bode as well for you in that type of attack.
Well, speaking of the Shanahan offensive line zone outside scheme, that's what the Jets employ.
Yeah.
And that's what the Patriots will go up against this week. And that's why early in the season and this matchup with the Jets is going to be a big advantage for New England because, well, first of all, Becton had been out for a while with the concussion and a few other things. Then he gets in the game, and then he's out now for 4 to 6 weeks. And when you run that scheme, you've got to have continuity. You've got to be able. It's consistency, practice over and over. You have to. It's like a ballet. It's a dance with the line. Jets are just weeks, maybe even a month or two away, before, as long as everybody stays healthy, of being an effective offensive line run blocking unit, and that should really be helpful for the Patriots in this game. Panthers' strength was up front, though. And I'll be interested to see how that works out with the Patriots. Look, Judon, we know how tough he is. And it's not like the Patriots don't have good defenders in their front seven. That is their strength. But again, the Panthers have some pretty premium players. And I think it was no surprise the Jets got beat up at the line of scrimmage. The other thing is Zach Wilson is different than Tua. Zach's going to want to go down the field.
Yeah.
That's going to be, again, you would think, maybe playing into the Patriots because they're not going to want to give that up. Maybe Zach is going to want to throw some balls down there, even though a couple of times that Zach threw the ball down there, it was because he was running out of pressure and things were breaking down, which is what you want in a quarterback like this. Gets out of pressure, everything's breaking down downfield, and hopefully you find a receiver streaking wide open. Like I said, Moore dropped the ball on one of those passes. He hit Davis for a long one in another sequence. But in general, he had a really tough day in the pocket because of the ineffectiveness by the Jets to run the ball, to block him effectively. And that has a lot to do with not just the offensive line, but, he's a rookie quarterback. And Bill Belichick against rookie quarterbacks, that doesn't really bode well for the rookie quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, not to sound like too much of a homer, but this could get ugly for Zach Wilson and the Jets offense with the offensive line that they're working with, especially without Becton. And Becton, like Trent Brown, both huge human beings, and injuries tend to sneak up on those big guys, right? Those guys have a tough time, especially with the soft tissue stuff and things like that, staying healthy just because they're carrying so much weight on their frame. So Becton, I feel for the Jets because he's been a fantastic player and pick every time he steps on the field, and he just can't seem to stay healthy, and that's really frustrating. We know it to a degree with Isaiah Wynn, similar boat, where every time he steps on the field, he's a really solid player for the Patriots, but just can't stay healthy. Now, what scares me about Wilson, because I think Bill Belichick is going to confuse the hell out of Zach Wilson, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure in his face. But the play creation outside the pocket is definitely an element of Wilson's game that he could fall back on. Unlike Sam Darnold, who he's not a statue, right? But Wilson definitely better at creating out of structure, right? When the play breaks down and it's the first read's not there and the rush gets to you, how do you react? What do you do? And Wilson's always been nifty, even at BYU, at eluding pressure, getting out of the pocket, and then making throws down the field with impressive arm talent. And when you hear about the comparisons in the draft, the Patrick Mahomes comparisons to Zach Wilson came from that out of structure, second reaction, scramble ability, and throw the football down the field. So although I wouldn't necessarily say that that's burned the Patriots too much in the past or something that a rookie quarterback can do consistently against a Bill Belichick coach defense, you hit one or two big plays down the field, that obviously changes the complexion of the game. So if I'm Zach Wilson and I see pressure pre-snap, I'm not even standing in the pocket, right? Just get the hell out of there and try to do something with your legs because he's going to come after him and the offensive line is not going to be up for it, especially if Becton's not in the lineup. So if I'm Zach Wilson and I see pressure from Bill Belichick on a third down or something like that, I am getting out of dodge and I'm just relying on my legs and my play creation and hope for the best. On the other side of the football for the Patriots, this is in my eyes, a great test for Mac Jones to see if he can actually push the ball down the field against an NFL defense, right? We know he can do all the little things, all the minutia before the snap, the quick passing, the underneath throws, the efficiency type plays. We know he can do all that based off of what we saw against Miami. But the question is are they going to be able to, as an offense, and it's not just on Mac, it's on Nelson Aguilar, it's on the tight ends, as an entire unit, are they going to be able to create explosive plays down the field? Because it's very, very difficult to put up points in the NFL with death by 1,000 paper cuts. And I know that people think that the Patriots did that for 20 years, but in reality, they really didn't. You know, Tom Brady made a ton of downfield throws in his career as a Patriot. So that is, I think, a narrative that is extremely overblown. And at some point in time, Mac Jones, whether it's to Nelson Aguilar, like Robbie Anderson did against the Jets last week, or to the tight ends up the middle of the field, or he's going to have to hit a play over 30 yards. He's going to have to hit
this is the week to do it.
Yeah.
So this will tell you an awful lot about that. And look, also keep in mind, LaMarcus Joyner's now out for the year. Ashton Davis hasn't returned. So no Ashton Davis, no LaMarcus Joyner. The safety situation is now, besides Marcus May, is going to be a big question. You know, CJ Mosley is pretty much the only guy that they can count on now at linebacker. They got, you know, young guys and banged up young guys, and up front, of course, they have a couple of other injuries along the defensive line. Of course, the biggest one we know, but all in all, they put up some decent pressure against Carolina, but Carolina's offensive line is not very good. So I don't really look at that as competition, to tell you the truth. Overall, it wasn't like they had 5 or 6 sacks, so I don't think that's anything that the Patriots probably have to worry about. It's going to be about both teams. This is why the Patriots are going to have the edge, obviously, is establishing the running game. And the Jets just couldn't establish the running game at all. And I'll say this, too, about the running game. I didn't see this in San Francisco. I don't see it in Green Bay. I'm like, okay, maybe it's because they didn't run enough offensive plays, but it's Tevin Coleman goes out there for the first series. Then it's Michael Carter for the second series. Then it's Ty Johnson then it's Tevin. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, stick with a guy for at least 2 or 3 series in a row. I mean, that constant rotating of the running back thing, I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know if that's a LaFleur thing, but it's not going to establish.
Seems like, I know that they like Michael Carter a lot, and I do too, but it seems like Michael Carter should be more of their James White, right? Like their passing games back, change of pace type of guy. Whereas Tevin Coleman should be their outside zone runner, because he ran in that system with Kyle Shanahan for years in Atlanta. Let him be the one-cut guy, right? It feels like that definitely fits Tevin Coleman's style. And the Patriots know a thing or two about Tevin Coleman and Kyle Shanahan. You know, they played them in Super Bowl 51. It obviously ended up working out for the Patriots in the long run. But that first half, Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman outside zone right down the Patriots' throats a couple of times for some big plays. So it's we'll see what happens. You know, this is the Patriots on paper played a great game against Miami, and if that team shows up against the Jets on Sunday in the Meadowlands, they should win this game going away. But they shot themselves in the foot way too many times, and with Tom Brady, it just even things that had nothing to do with Tom Brady, it just never seemed to happen, right? The Patriots never fumbled the game away with 3 minutes to go. Well, I mean, they did in the Super Bowl against the Eagles, so I shouldn't say never, but they usually did not, right? And they weren't the most penalized team, right? They were the team that was the fundamentally sound and avoided the penalties, because the Patriots on Sunday against the Dolphins, poor Kendrick Bourne had 2 or 3 catches down the field, and all of them got called back for some sort of offensive line infraction, right? So he's down the field, he's pumped up, his first game as a Patriot, and there's laundry on the field, and the ball comes back. So those types of penalties that took big plays off the board, the fumbles, obviously, they put the ball on the ground 4 times. They only lost it twice, but they had 4 fumbles. That's just not the Patriot football that we're used to seeing around here, right? That type of fundamentally poor football. And on the defensive side of the football, struggling to tackle is also a fundamental component that the Patriots have always been extremely good at. So missing tackles or just having issues getting guys on the ground, penalties, fumbles, the bad teams do those kinds of things, right? Not the Patriots, not Bill Belichick coach teams.
Well, and I wouldn't anticipate that's going to happen for a second consecutive game, because it hardly ever does happen in consecutive games for Belichick. And by the way, keep in mind the Jets are going to have a new punter because Mann is out now. Amendola came in the game and kicked like twice. I think he had like a 55-yard average, which was really weird to have your place kicker go out there and boot 2 major punts, but they're not going to do that. They're going to bring in a new punter. So that's another issue. Just have too many injuries. And you talk about this every year with teams that are not very good. You can't have injuries. And and the Jets are just got a bunch of key guys that are out. And it's going to be a long season. And that's what you really want to avoid. And at least that's what the Patriots have going for them right now, is at least, yes, one major guy is out till midseason, but for the most part, the group is there. The group is there that still should be able to win a lot of football games.
It should, and if they get the quarterback play that they did against the Dolphins from Mac Jones, that should win them a lot of football games, right? A stat like QBR, for example, is a win probability stat for the quarterback position. Mac Jones's QBR was 75, so that means that QBR tells you if you get that level of play from your quarterback, you should win 75% of the games that you play. So that's obviously one game; it's a tiny sample size, but he played well enough, and all the players after the game and on Monday said this. Mac Jones put them in a position to win the game against the Dolphins on Sunday. They should have won that game against Miami, and it was outside factors from the quarterback, fumbles by Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, bad penalties by the offensive line, bad uncharacteristic tackling on the defensive side of the ball that lost the Patriots that game. And I would also throw Josh McDaniels under the bus there as well for the play calling in certain situations. So if Mac replicates that every single week, and I don't think that's outlandish to say. It's not like he came out there like Tom Brady did against the Cowboys and threw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, this was a pedestrian box score for Mac Jones. So if he replicates that performance week in and week out, this Patriots team should win a lot of games with that type of quarterback.
And it should be a good atmosphere this Sunday as well, because it's a rivalry game. The Patriots have beaten the Jets 10 consecutive times.
Yeah.
And, it's the New York fan base, and they are just going to be very loud early, at least, until the Patriots take a 2-score lead, probably. But if it's for some reason a close game into the fourth quarter, it should be a fun atmosphere. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm hoping, of course, it's a close game and not a whitewash, thanks to Bill Belichick and the rookie quarterback dynamic. But if it's a close game, it should be an entertaining one.
Yeah, and I'll be there, so it'll be fun to hear the atmosphere, and it'll be exciting. I'm driving down on Saturday for the game, so I will be there, and we'll have coverage on CLNS from the Meadowlands. It's always an easy one to go down there, 3.5-hour drive from Boston for Patriots Jets, so it'll be fun.
Yeah, and then of course, again, the post game show is on Patriots Press Pass.
Yeah, so we do the live post-game show about 30 minutes after the game because I like to go down and do the press conferences, and then I come back up and do the post-game show. So that would be about 30 minutes after the final whistle on Patriots Press Pass, and then all my written stuff falls on clnsmedia.com.
Evan, appreciate it as always. As far as the schedule, what is it coming up next?
So they have the Jets, and then they have the New
Rams?
Orleans Saints.
Oh, Saints, and then
the
the
week
Bucks.
after, and then the that
Super Bowl
game against that dude that I forget his name.
Yeah,
I don't remember. New Orleans week 3, Tampa week 4.
All right. Well, we got a couple of weeks before we talk about that one, and we'll see how everything goes with. We'll see how everything goes with the Jet game next week, and then we'll preview the Saints, who had a laugher against the Packers, but it's just 1 week. So
yeah.
All right, Evan. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, Greg.